Are we the only two here in the meeting?
Oh, Libby's here. Andrew's here.
Oh,
Oh,
I can't see everyone.
oh,
How's
are
it
you
going?
on a phone?
No, I am on the phone. I am.
You're gonna have to flip screens, I think, Jim.
I'm going to be right back. I'm going to restart. I've got to restart real quick. I'll be right back.
Okay.
Okay.
And someone just made me the host, so I don't want that. Let me make Zach. I'm going to make Zach the host, my man.
Oh, there we go.
I'll be right back.
Give me 1 second here.
We're just. I just tore down the Whitehall Farmers Market this afternoon.
Oh, okay.
Susan does the Tuesday Whitehall and the Saturday morning Clintonville now.
So
two of
is
them.
the Whitehall on Yearling Road or where is it?
So the Whitehall one it's the southeast corner of Hamilton and Broad. It's a new little redevelopment area with a new green space called the Kelly Green.
Right. My son is working for Whitehall and a lot of his time is spent there. Particularly, I think is there a water thing there? A water.
There is a pool that is kind of between the Kelly Green and the Old Bag of Nails. So, yeah.
How about like just sprays?
I guess I haven't paid attention. I don't know if there's.
I haven't been out there myself, but he's been telling me about that. But he's working for Whitehall this summer.
Oh, good.
Yeah.
Jim, Susan's cinnamon rolls are excellent.
Yes, they are.
I will pass that along. Yeah, they are fantastic. They are people. We have repeat customers, that's for sure, Hugh.
I'm one of them. Not too often, but not often enough.
Absolutely, yeah, right.
Forgive me while I turn off my office lighting here.
Nice.
Our basement was probably redone in the 70s sometime, so I've got a drop-in ceiling, and it feels I was working from home so long, it just feels like an office at this point. Are we waiting on anybody else, Andrew?
Andrew's not back on yet. I don't think.
We'll wait till he gets back. Oh, there he is. I have to admit him now because he made me the host.
Only if he's good, right, Zach?
Exactly.
That's right. It's like Jeff Bezos right now. Isn't there a petition going on right now with signatures that if he leaves Earth in his rocket, the petition is to not allow him back to re-entry onto Earth? Just funny.
That's okay. He'll just go to his
on the moon.
He'll just go to his base on the moon.
Yes.
Right. That's right. That's right.
Yeah, sorry, I had to restart. I needed my headphones to work. I'm at my niece's house, and I don't want to wake her up.
So, Andrew, are we waiting for anybody else, or is this everyone?
I think it might be Megan's on vacation, and Will just emailed me and said he wasn't able to make it this evening. So, have we, Hugh? Have we had an introduction for Hugh at all?
We have not.
All right, Jim, go ahead.
Great. So I'm sure Libby probably knows Hugh, and I know Hugh, but he is our new, and I am in District 4. So Hugh Crowell is our new District 4 CAC commissioner. So I thought it'd be nice for him to attend and just kind of sit in and watch us make sausage, right? Isn't that kind of
And I can say I know Hugh, but this is the second meeting I've been in with him.
Very nice.
Next week, I actually get to see our District 2 rep for the first time. He's been on all of our meetings, but he doesn't use the video. So I have no idea what he looks like.
So welcome, Hugh.
Thank you.
Yes.
Yes. Commissioner-elect Hugh Kroll. Yeah,
Oh,
my
okay.
term
Okay.
doesn't actually start till July 1st. Yeah,
All right.
but anyway,
It's
And
great
then
to have you here.
it was, yes.
Yeah,
and
it really is.
I'm curious about this committee and seeing what your activities are, and so that I can be better informed and do a better job as a commissioner, just because I know what you're doing. And
Wow, we appreciate that.
I have not attended one of these meetings previously. So
Well, welcome. Thanks for being with us. I think we're in the sort of two things we're going to discuss tonight. And Zach, I'll give you the floor here in a minute. I wanted to get one sort of business item out of the way. I attached to the invite to this meeting the instructions from the Area Commission in terms of expressing your interest in continuing to serve on this committee. So I know Andrew Miller and Will have already done that, but please sort of follow those directions. It's pretty straightforward. If you don't mind, I think a couple folks have copied myself and BJ White. So feel free to do something like that as well. But I think she's set up a general email address that you need to send it to. So it goes to a sort of central clearinghouse. So please do that, I believe, before the middle of July. So I'll send out another reminder, but please go ahead and do that.
Okay.
And
I'll take care of it.
Yeah, we'll be in good shape then for the process that will occur in August to seat new slate of folks, some continuing, hopefully some new faces as well. And if you think of anyone that you think might be interested in joining, I know in the past we've really endeavored to have representation from each of the, I guess, what do we call
Districts.
them, Livy? Districts. We don't call them wards, right? Districts in the neighborhood. And I think we've most often than not, I think had at least 8 out of 9, if not 9 out of 9 represented. So we really try and do that. So if there's anyone you know of, please pass that information along to them as well. So tonight I wanted to, I think we've had a little bit of people in and out of town and doing other things, which is fine. So I think there might be some people that haven't heard some things. You remember the survey that we did. Zach has an update to that. Last month, I sort of ran through really rough data. We finally got the geolocated data from each of the 781 respondents mapped. But that was really just the rough cut. And I'll let Zach explain what he's done in the meantime. So right before our last meeting, the geolocation was done and we let GIS sort of spit out some rough maps. But now Zach's been able to spend a little more time with the data. And so I'll give the floor to him for tonight and roll through those results. So Zach, go ahead.
Sounds great. Yeah. So hi, everyone. Hi, Hugh. Nice to meet you. My name's Zach and Zach Kennitzer. And I've been on the commission now about 1.5 years, maybe 2 full years. But this has been kind of one of the projects that we've been working on to try to understand maybe how do I prioritize infrastructure in the community. So without further ado, if anybody has any questions, feel free to interject at any point in time or comments even. My hope is that this becomes a little bit more of a conversation, right? Because, one of the things that's for certain about this is that, while I may have made the maps, I shouldn't be the lone person interpreting the maps, right? So looking forward to some robust conversation, hopefully here tonight. So hopefully everyone can see my screen. Forgive me if I'm looking back and forth at various screens here. I have a little miniature command center set up here. So if you see me looking around, that's what's going on. First of all, I kind of want to give you guys an update on what we did in the intervening time. So looking at the original data, really what was happening is we were kind of seeing clusterings of respondents, not necessarily clusterings of what those respondents were saying, right? So we went back, we looked at the original data and really kind of used the original data as a way to interpret what was going on. So there's first kind of 2 approaches. The first, which I think we'll get to second actually, because I think that those are interesting, but I think the qualitative kind of set up the quantitative qualitative set up the quantitative. So first is in mapping those quantitatives. So what we did is we mapped anybody that basically had a favorable opinion of an item, right? So anything that was basically greater than 0. And what we also did in this is we made sure that we kept all of the opinions as they were on the same scale. So if a person was like, yeah, absolutely, this is the most important thing in the world, they're scoring at a 3, right? Which is the computer dictates, right? The math dictates. Then that's super dark green. If they're, closer to a 0 or a 1, it's going to be a lighter green, right? And what I did is basically to kind of understand and kind of see the shape of where these opinions are, turn down opacity for the layer. So basically you can see through it and you can see through all the layers. And, basically what it does is enables us to say, okay, dark areas, it's important, lighter areas, maybe not so much. And this is a first pass at these maps too. If we need to dig deeper, we can also do that. And then the second piece is that we also mapped the qualitative comments. So when we originally went through the survey, what I did was I went through and I read every single qualitative response. I wish I were kidding, 4 or 5 times. And if there was a mention of a word, if there were certain ways of the things were said, they got categorized, right? And as silly as it sounds, like you're like, oh, well, that must be value. How can you know? Really, for me, it's just going through reading the things and marking 1s and 0s, right? So if a certain person's like, I want sidewalks, well, then I mark them as a 1 in sidewalks. Or, oh gosh, gee golly, really improved sidewalks would be really, really nice. Then, right, they would also go in the sidewalks category. The person was like, well, I don't necessarily want new sidewalks. Then they weren't necessarily for something, right? But they could be against something, right? If there were enough people basically saying I'm against XYZ, I created a category for those folks as well. So what was really interesting is those qualitative comments, when you began mapping those, there was actually some really clear patterns that begin to emerge. And this is kind of the reveal of what those look like. And today, my hope is that we can kind of synthesize meaning from some of these things, or begin to, right? It's going to take a little bit of time, obviously, to do all of that. But, I think that it's really important that we do it together as a group. And as Andrew said, as Jim said, this is where the sausage gets made. So without further ado, the way that I've organized these is I put the qualitative ones up front, and I've put them in order by number of counts. So I'll flip to the first one here, and you can see qualitative comments for sidewalk mentions. And down here in the corner, I put the number of people, number of instances that sidewalks were mentioned. So basically what this is if one person mentioned sidewalks 5 times or 1 time, it didn't matter, right? This is basically the number of people that mentioned sidewalks at least once, right? Is the way to kind of read this. Now, why didn't I do it so that way we overcount people? Because if we were to do that, somebody that would have written the word bicycle 100 times would have 100 comments versus a person who rolled a bicycle once, right? And we want to kind of make sure that we have some parity among respondents. So interestingly, sidewalks, the sidewalks comments, which are also the number 1 quantitative piece, which we'll talk a little bit more about later, really showed up kind of in what I would call the East Beachwald area, kind of the Zooland edition for those that are hyper familiar with the suburban editions here in Columbus. But yeah, there's kind of an area up there, and actually this is where I live, and I'm not surprised by this because we have a lot of people walking in our neighborhood, and we have gaps in sidewalks, kind of jaggedy sidewalks, things like that. But what's interesting is that you can see kind of here from the density of comments, 230 people unprompted said that sidewalks were an issue or a concern to them, which I thought was interesting. Now, one of the things that I will say contextually that we know about this, and I've mentioned this in other meetings, is that this is kind of a phenomenon for COVID, right? Just because it's a COVID phenomenon doesn't mean it's not important, but cities across the country are really experiencing an uptick in citizens calling and letting them know that, hey, I've got sidewalk issues in my neighborhood, which I think is really interesting, just from a big picture perspective. But that came up in our neighborhood, and that was the to begin. So,
I think, Zach, the one thing we didn't get a chance to do yet is to overlay this information with a GIS layer that shows where there are sidewalk gaps in the neighborhood. So we have that. We just need to coordinate a little bit, but that will show where there's an alignment between an actual physical need. So I think, just anecdotally, that dark area, Zach sort of already picked up, but you can see, and again, we'll make this more clear when we get into the final details, but you can see Milton has sort of a smudge on it, which makes sense. And you can see kind of that Indianola corridor south of North Broadway. I know people for a long time, and in the work that's being done there by the city, really complaining about the quality and condition of those sidewalks, and the fact that there are things like utility poles and signs and all sorts of stuff in the middle of them. So I think when we overlay this other information, it'll be more powerful. It'll sort of validate the feelings people have told us.
Yeah, exactly. So on the next one, traffic calming measures was the second most, but we saw that decline from 230 mentions all the way down to 94 mentions. Traffic calming along North Broad area and High Street, that kind of key intersection, and then again, kind of in the east Beachwald, south of Morse area. Kind of maybe a little dark area here too, along just really along High Street and North Broad as well. Restaurant business development mentions, we can see kind of a clear jump at this point, right? So you can see here kind of along that these are people that are looking for more restaurants, more businesses to go into the neighborhood. Now, if I recall correctly, kind of a smattering of these comments were really around local businesses and kind of attracting those. So I think that's kind of an interesting observation. Remember kind of where those people are, because I think they pop up in other places.
So these are mentions of people who are interested in businesses or supporting businesses. I mean, because if there had been a mention of like, boy, I'm against all of these new businesses coming in, that would have been in a separate category, correct?
Correct.
Okay.
And by and large, because of the way that, and maybe this is maybe a potential bias of the survey itself, right? It's hard to know, but what I would say is because we framed it is what could you improve or change about your neighborhood?
Mm-hmm.
A lot of the comments that we saw, I would say 80%, 85%, maybe even 90% were overwhelmingly like, I would like to see this added, right? They weren't really framed in a negative way. There were negative comments, and one of the biggest negative categories was conversation around the Starbucks, and that's an actual map that I have in here as well. But by and large, there were some people that were negative about development. They didn't want to see the neighborhood change. They didn't want more density. They were kind of anti-density, as it were. So those were coded that way. But other than that, those are really the only two major kind of, I would say, negative categories.
Okay.
So, but yeah, these are people that were looking for more businesses and restaurants. Basically saying, "Oh, I'd love to have it in a place that's walkable," or something like that.
Isn't that interesting? They're concentrated right there.
Yeah, there's several patterns like that. There's some interesting things, and I think the quantitative will kind of reinforce some of that too. It's interesting.
Yeah.
So on the next one, roadway improvements. So perhaps this one I think is kind of, there's multiple areas of focus, right? I thought it was interesting that kind of this little 6-point star right here, there's a little dot over that. And then of course, down through the ravines and things like that, there were some concerns about roadway improvements. Even up here in kind of this ravine area, there was. So if you kind of look at the ravines where they are, that's kind of how I'm interpreting this, right? The roadways down by those ravines are kind of areas where people would like to see some sort of roadway improvements. Yeah, that's kind of what I thought about that. I certainly opened up other interpretations though.
Right. Well, there's also a huge concentration there in the northwest corner of Northwest Broadway and High Street. Yeah, over on the west side of High Street. No, northwest.
West.
Yeah.
Okay, yep.
Yep. And that's interesting. That's not a ravine area. That's, Dunedin and Orchard and all the things that are in my district.
That may, that may
by the
be
high
bike
school?
path.
Oh, bike path.
Bike path.
Yeah, so there's other bike path That's actually, I think, one of the next ones here, actually. Let me
Okay,
see.
yeah.
Well, street lighting's next. And you can see street lighting up here. And I can speak for our little neck of the woods. There are no street lights up here. So I'm not surprised that was a common mention up here. 57 mentions. And then bicycle infrastructure, here it is. 56
Oh, wow.
mentions, almost all of them in that neighborhood.
Yep. Intense interest there.
And I think there was also another one that was multi-use path in the quantitative as well. And you can see kind of the pattern all around here. The bicycle paths, multi-use paths are a major hot button issue in that community. Next slide up, stormwater and flooding. So I know that many people are sick and tired of hearing about this, but Project Blueprint, obviously, where kind of those neighborhoods are, kind of appeared as hotspots. I'm not necessarily surprised by that. But yeah, just kind of, I guess, validating the research and more than anything else. Obviously there's not much we can do about that as a committee right now, but a lot of people are upset about that. So those got some mentions. Tree canopy. Again, I know that there's a big tree canopy initiative kind of down in the areas that this is kind of highlighted. And, certainly that's a worthwhile cause. And, there's, some density there along High Street and kind of the area just directly north of Old North Columbus there in the far south of Clintonville. Next up, Parks, Recreation, and Greenscape. I thought that the placement of this was pretty interesting because the big cluster people is kind of right by the Park of Roses, which I thought was particularly interesting. So that would stand to make sense. I think people that are maybe living around those areas that really value those assets would like to see those parks, recreation, and green space maintained and improved. Increased development housing. So I thought that this was really interesting that the North Broad High Street intersection kind of really popped, as well as maybe some of the area along here, North Broad along in kind of Indianola. People wanted to see kind of that area develop further, right? Those are the people that were, if I'm pro density, this is kind of where I say I live. So yeah, I thought that was really kind of an interesting position for that to be. I was expecting it to maybe to be in a little bit of a denser area, but yeah, regardless, I think it's pretty interesting.
It could be related to just North Broadway and High and all the conversations over the years that's happened there. And then you think about this sort of development that's happening along Indianola right now, I think the avenue is up for, looking at some of those buildings that front Indianola right now that have been sort of vacant, grass for a little bit. It makes sense.
Yeah. Next up, we have qualitative mentions of Starbucks. So again, not surprised by the locations of these respondents. This is Starbucks is right there, but very concentrated to that one area, similar to mentions of sidewalks and things like that. And only 25 people mentioned it.
Yeah. By the way, since that is such a controversial topic, Starbucks, I should mention that Catherine Cull and I are meeting with the Starbucks management on July 23rd.
Great.
To talk about the situation and what can be done. It is interesting to know that it is very concentrated right there, because those are the people who are affected by the traffic blockage.
Right.
It is interesting, Hugh, isn't it? Because that's you and I, obviously.
Yeah.
In our kind of neck of the woods there. But boy, that is, I would have guessed that there would have been more, I understand the concentration there, but I would have guessed more of a community-wide.
Me too.
Commentary on that.
And I thought there would be more. I mean, only 25.
Right.
Well, I know that, I pass Starbucks occasionally during some really high times. One of them was just this past Sunday, well, 2 Sunday mornings ago, because I was on my way up to the Park of Roses. But I would say that for the most part, if I'm passing Starbucks, it probably is not in one of the higher times. So you do have to be there frequently to really get the full force of it.
Hey, Zach, since you're the host, can you let Amanda back in? She just texted me and said she was having trouble getting in.
Yeah. I was
Her
looking.
phone disconnected. So
Hold on. Yeah, she can
maybe
rejoin. I'll keep an eye on my screen.
she may have given up on us. So
Okay.
Just anyway, she might.
I will
she
keep
may,
an eye on my, because I'm managing like 4 screens.
I know.
at once here, so.
I know. It's tough. I feel your pain.
Mm.
I feel your pain.
So Hugh, when you meet with the manager of Starbucks, is it to identify issues or maybe develop potential solutions or mitigate?
Possibly. Catherine is bringing someone from traffic engineering at the city.
Nice.
So there's going to be, some very, I think, specific and direct conversation about the logistics of the way they have things laid out. And there are some helpful suggestions from my neighbors and just people I've been talking to about how they could handle it differently. And I expect that will come up. It just depends on how defensive they are, how open they are.
Right.
Hearing, I have no idea what that's going to be like, but they're going to have at least 2 city people there in addition to me. So
I would love to put a plug in for Oakland Nursery. You know how they have the officer kind of out on Oakland Park with the white sunglasses that's directing traffic.
Yeah,
I would love if they could even just do something that helps.
I can't imagine it makes customers happy. So you think it would be
that's it.
No,
best
I
interest,
can't imagine, but
some of the best solutions, potential solutions I've heard of, would actually increase their flow through of traffic. They'd actually be able to handle more customers in a given unit of time, and therefore, yeah, like you say, make the customers happier. That they don't have to wait so long.
Yeah.
And and I don't think any of them like hanging out in the middle of High Street either.
No.
Yeah.
Well, when I heard that they were going to try something like Chick-fil-A,
Yeah.
I did my research and went over to Chick-fil-A on Morse Road, and what they do is pretty slick there.
Yes.
I'm wondering though if the coffee making is more intensive and they can't just grab a chicken thing and stick it in the bun and put the stuff on and get it out. It's how long it takes to. So I don't even pretend to understand, but I know sometimes if I go to Starbucks, which isn't real.
Yeah, it has to do with how fast they can produce their product.
Right.
And whether they can just barely keep up with the people that are in line now. They probably don't want an increased flow. I don't know.
Yeah.
Even though it would mean, more money for them, I think. But
that's good.
Yeah. So I don't know that's, and I expect it all comes down to, cost. I mean, they would have to hire people to be out there at peak times. And if it was if it's the Chick-fil-A model, there would have to be 2 of them.
Right.
Well, maybe 3 because they have 2 lines of order takers and then guys at the window that go and take it to the various cars. So.
Correct.
Right.
Yeah,
Right.
Yep.
Well,
so anyway, I didn't want to get
there's a meeting.
Didn't want to get too far into that, but I just
Well, I would love to hear what the outcome of that meeting is. That's great.
It'd be great.
Can't wait to hear that.
Okay.
Yeah. All right, Zach, you have more, I'm sure.
Yes, I do. There's lots more. So
yeah.
All right. So next up, we have against increased development and housing. So there's kind of a concentration of folks there. It's maybe hard to see, but it is a little bit more spread out. There's a kind of really the bounding is between kind of Henderson and North Broad is where most people are. There's a few people kind of along the North High Street corridor in the Beachwald area that are mentioning that, but by and large, it's south of Henderson. Then we have, okay, so those are the ones that I left in for the qualitative. So there's other ones that I have made, but the mentions start to get a lot lighter at this point. So mentions drop from 22 to, I believe, the next one's like 16. So it kind of felt like a good natural break, maybe. So that way we don't I don't want to chase, lose the forest for the trees, as it were. So really try to focus on the ones that had a bulk of mentions. So that kind of ends the qualitative portion. So kind of keep all of these in the back of your mind as we're going through, obviously, because, with anything like this, you have to kind of look at like 3 maps simultaneously to be like, okay, what's going on here, right? And we'll share all these out. I've got no problem sharing out all of the maps. But so I did put all the quantitative maps in here because everybody responded to all of those, right? So what you're going to see is maybe going to be the first couple times I went through it, it was a little confusing to me, but I think I begin to understand what's going on. So this is actually placed in order of importance. So the most important to the least important. And the darker green circles that you'll see here, people value that a lot more. The lighter green circles, they value a little less. The people that are negative don't appear. And I think that's what's going on. So we'll show you what that means here in a second. So first up was sidewalks, right? Based on the entire survey, sidewalks, repairing or leveling, and adding connecting sidewalks were the 2 most important issues that people identified. And the patterns that we were kind of seeing in the qualitative reappear here. And you can really see the really kind of dense green cluster of people up here in kind of this Beachwald area. But then as you're talking about along High Street and along Indianola, right? People are really kind of concentrated on those issues. Down here in the South where things are pretty connected, walkability and sidewalks are a little less of a concern. So thought it was really interesting that that these kind of appeared where they did. And overall, this is the darkest green map you're going to see. So on the next one, added connecting sidewalks, you have to kind of, I'll flip between the 2 of them, but you can see not much changes. So it really is, it's connecting, improving, adding. Sidewalk issues are very clearly a major issue in the neighborhood. And there's great consistency in terms of where people see the issues, is what I would say. So the next one is improving existing parks. So I thought that this was interesting, right? So you can kind of see the first kind of green shift, as it were. So what happens is people, there's kind of, you kind of do the squint test. You can see that there's more people down here, kind of west of High and north of North Broad, kind of in this area, which are talking about the parks. That's not surprising, perhaps, right? Because we have Park of Roses right there and some of our other parks. So, people up here, kind of in this area, there's a few people that want to see some parks and stuff, which I think may be, worth looking into. But the vast majority of people, when you're looking at the intensity of their wants, are kind of over by the park as itself. So improving the existing kind of Park of Roses is a priority.
Well, where your cursor is there is really would be south of the Park of Roses, like that. What is that, Northmore, Andrew? Northmore?
Yeah.
Park, and which, you can see that not much has happened there in the last few years. A little, but I can see how that is.
Yeah, and we will, like I said, we'll overlay,
Yeah.
all the parks in the neighborhood on top of this, and so it'll be a little easier. And we know the neighborhood, right? But it'll be a lot easier for us to read the maps and make some interpretations when we overlay that data on top of this.
Yeah.
So that's the next step.
So next is improving multi-use paths. So
Mm.
again, the pattern that we were seeing about bicycle paths and multi-use paths, we're seeing again here. People that the green, you could almost see the bike path.
Yep. or the on street portion of the old tangent.
Yes,
Yeah.
the on-street portion of the old tangent trail. Yep.
Yes.
In the map itself. Yep, right there.
Yeah.
And yeah, clearly it was a concern for those. But other things I thought were interesting up here along High Street, and along Indianola, people kind of in those areas thought it was important as well. Even up here, and the people that were responding kind of in the Sharon Woods area felt it was important. So, multi-use paths I thought was really interesting because I think when you flip to bicycle, things get considerably lighter. So next up though, and this is where it gets interesting. So it goes from, you see this map, it's kind of dark green in a lot of spots, but then we go to improve safety of crosswalks. So this one's light green, but this was like the 5th most important thing.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Once you aggregate all the, yeah.
So I think what's going on is everyone's like, well, I already like sidewalks. We need more sidewalks. So that's very important to me, but the crosswalks are also important because that's kind of how you create that connectivity. But there's people that are like, we don't need any more crosswalks, that are very negative, that, aren't necessarily, those don't exist. Right. So what you're seeing is everyone's kind of like, yeah, crosswalks are kind of important, I think is what's going on. So there's not a lot of intensity, but it's one of those things where, like, if you've got the sidewalks, it's kind of like, well, yeah, crosswalks are a little important too, which I thought was kind of interesting. That's kind of how I'm interpreting this. It's when this kind of showed up light green, I was like, whoa, okay. So, but yeah, really interesting.
It is interesting.
Well, and I would say the southern portion might reflect how many more people walk and how many more of them have discovered how difficult it is to, find a crosswalk. And once again, this past week, a pedestrian was either hit or killed up on Carl Road. And they said in the article, the pedestrian was not in a crosswalk. Well, it was near 161. If you look at Carl Road, there are virtually no crosswalks on Carl Road. And the city just expects you to cross at an intersection and for the motorists to magically understand that they are at an intersection and should watch out for pedestrians. So now it could be that the person was so far out of the crosswalk or where a crosswalk would be, but there's so few that they don't have any choices.
I think what would be valuable to add to this, to that point, Libby, is where the signalized intersections are. Because for the most part, that's where
that's the only place
that's the only place crosswalks exist, even though, technically where there's a curb ramp, you're allowed to cross the street, but there's no safety mechanisms put in place for that to facilitate that. So
I mean, could this represent just satisfaction with the crosswalks that are there now? I mean, people don't see it as an important issue because they're satisfied with the way things are. They don't see it as a problem. Is that one way to interpret this?
I hadn't thought about that. We'd have to do a little bit more digging, I think, but that might be. It's hard to be, right? Because the challenge is all we know is, like, we asked them, on a list of these 5 things, which is the most important, which is the least important. And basically it was kind of very middle importance for everybody. But with everybody, the average was higher because there wasn't as much kind of dispassionate love or hate of it.
Got it. Right.
But did the phrase say improves crosswalks or add crosswalks?
Yes, improve safety of and or crosswalks. Improve crosswalks.
I think this is kind of interesting, actually, on Indianola north of Morris Road, because there are no traffic signals along there once you get north of Morris. The only crossing is actually at Lincoln, where it crosses the railroad track, where there isn't even sidewalks there. So
You know, to
And even
Hugh's
then-
point,
yeah.
I almost wonder if this ended up being like people's second choice. Like, yeah, it's important to me, but there's something else that's more important. So that's
Yeah.
maybe why it's lighter green and not so intense green.
But it
Yeah.
is, but it is wide, but it is widespread, right?
It's widespread.
Yeah, it's across the board. I mean, almost.
Yeah, I mean that's kind of how I interpret it. Is like it's kind of like if I like chocolate, vanilla, and strawberry, I'm gonna pick chocolate every time. But
Me too.
vanilla's
Right.
great too. So
Mhm.
It's ranked choice voting, is what it is.
That's
Yeah.
right.
Yeah.
That's right.
except that sometimes people don't know what they're doing. At the end, it just spits out there. For this though, what was really cool though is that we did show people their top 3 based on what they were picking, so they were able to confirm it.
Yeah, and if they didn't like it, they were able to do it again. They thought it didn't represent them.
Oh, that's true.
Oh.
Right.
Yeah.
All right.
So okay, next up, traffic calming. So here it's interesting because you can see there's a green blob right here directly north of North High Street.
Yeah, I think you could tie that into the Starbucks, couldn't you?
Yeah, that's
Yeah,
kind
You're
of
right.
what.
If
There,
you-
that's Torrance, Dunedin, Piedmont.
Oh,
Brandon.
yeah.
Yes.
yeah.
Yeah.
Mhm.
Well, I'm certain I'm in there in the data. So.
Yeah, me too. You and me both. Right.
Yeah.
Yep.
Yeah.
One
Yeah,
of the
there's
things
some-
that was really surprising to me though was kind of, I know there's not necessarily a lot of people that live along the Henderson stretch here, but there wasn't kind of a closer concentration of people along that area. Because I know Henderson sometimes to me or Cook Road, pardon me,
Cook. Yeah.
seems like a death trap. I see somebody walking down that, I'm like, oh no, don't walk down this road.
Yeah.
This is very surprising to me up in District 9 by like Graceland along High Street because it's frightening driving
Yeah.
that portion of High Street.
That's true. You would have thought more responses there. Mm-hmm.
And it could just be a byproduct of those people didn't see the survey too. You just never know.
Mm. Could you flip back to crosswalk so we can look at that?
Yeah. So yeah, there's just not a lot of people kind of
Okay. Yeah.
maybe responding up there.
Okay. Thank you.
So next one. So this one had quite a bit of kind of passion,
Wow. Yeah.
right? So people really, really, really thought this was important. And I think the concentration of people along that High Street corridor is really indicative of a desire to maybe improve the streetscape appearance
Mhm.
along.
Indianola's pretty heavy too.
Indianola's heavy too. Yeah. So
If we just waited 10 years to improve High Street, we would have had a better High Street. But,
Yes. I'm looking back at the bike path area.
yeah.
And I'm wondering I think it's kind of pretty along there. So I'm
Well-
wondering what the aesthetic appearance,
Well,
I'm just trying
yeah.
to figure out what their thought process was.
Well, I mean, I think the other thing with this question too, Libby, though, if you think about the way it's asked about major commercial corridors. So even though the dot doesn't show up on Indianola or High Street, which would be the would you say that you think, Zach, that
yeah,
that,
would agree
that,
with that.
that
Yeah.
those are folks that probably walk to High Street?
Thank
I
you.
would think on a pretty regular basis. Yeah.
Yeah. That's a big point. Thank you.
Planting additional street trees. Again, this kind of follows kind of the tree canopy conversation, I would say. Not really popular or common kind of further north. I know tree canopy is a big conversation in the southern portion of Clintonville. So
Mhm.
these results perhaps aren't surprising, but I do think that they match that tree canopy piece and the qualitative really well.
Yeah, and we can add that tree canopy layer to this.
Yep. Next up, improve safety in school zones. So again, kind of one of those things where it really wasn't of high importance, and now we're actually kind of getting into the negative overall average negative space. So, this was not necessarily a super big comment, but you will notice that there are clusters of people kind of nearby where the schools are. So Coleraine Elementary specifically, and kind of the middle school, elementary school kind of cluster that's over here.
Yeah, we can overlay the schools on top of this so that you can see a little bit around Indianola and Formal. And well, not quite Clinton though, which is interesting. But clearly, what's the one that's on North Broadway? I forget.
I see.
I see. Yeah,
Mhm.
I see.
Next up, bicycle infrastructure. So this one had a lot of passionate people or people that didn't want it at all. So you can see that basically you can see exactly where the passionate folks are. And again, you can kind of trace that line exactly down the path of the Olentangy Trail that isn't part of the Olentangy Trail.
You can see Indianola and High coming up pretty good too.
Next up, improving street lighting. So even though this really appeared in the qualitative comments, when it came to the quantitative piece, like it wasn't ranked very highly. And there really wasn't a lot of passion about it one way or the other, which I thought was interesting. In the area where there's not a lot of street lighting, you can kind of see, there is a cluster of folks up there. But by and large, it was one of those things where it's mentioned the qualitative, but not necessarily reflected in the quantitative, which is interesting. Improved transit, access to bus stops. Again, not a lot of passion towards. And then I think the repairing alleyways, a little bit in the north area, a little bit in the south, maybe areas where there's some older alleys, but by and large, not necessarily a super high priority. And then repairing, replacing curbs, even less of a priority. You can see the curbs up here. This may be, people thinking about curbs and sidewalks as together. It's kind of maybe how I read this a little bit, which would seem to make sense, but, open to other interpretations there. I think the last one, there's improved on-street parking, which was near the bottom. So no issues with on-street parking, really at large. Planted medians, kind of shifted down here. Are there planted medians? I don't drive this area on a regular basis, so there are planted medians down here in this kind of area.
Just
there's
on
the one
street there at the market, where the market.
By Global Gallery.
Okay. So not super passionate about planted medians, but I think if we kind of think about the trees thing too, it maybe reflects some of that. And then I think the last one is improving signage. And no one was passionate about improving signage.
Message received.
Yeah, right.
People don't want more signs.
Yeah, no more signs. So when asked about that, that was by far the one that nobody really cared about. So
well, I found out I don't even see most of the ones that are there. It's been there 3 years. Okay, I'll try and find it.
Libby, the stop signs with the white border,
those
are optional.
Yes. I do try to see those.
Yeah. So, I can't remember who was on last time. Maybe I think Drew, you were, and I can't remember who else was, but last time we were just seeing this sort of raw concentration without assigning value to it. And so this is a lot more, this is better information. It really helps us drill down to what's important. And so I'm really hopeful, and especially since, we try and, complete a project that we started in a sort of the area commission calendar year. I'm hopeful, and Jim, I don't know, I might go ahead and volunteer your front porch. I'm hopeful that we could come up with sort of add in some GIS layers to this to help tell some of the stories. But Zach, come up with like a a quick sort of takeaway, fit it on a Post-it note, obviously be a presentation, but, here are the top concerns of our neighbors and where those are starting to emerge and what the sort of key takeaways are, and so maybe we only add those layers or only show portions of this that are the most, that show a clear cut story of what's important to the respondents of the survey. So I think that's what I'd like to try and achieve next. And I know the area commission meeting is on the 1st, which is 9 days from now, if I'm doing my math right. So I wanted to have this review today to sort of talk about it. And then, if there's a time that we might be able to, anyone who's interested, sort of gather up. It could be my front porch too, for that matter, although my kitchen's down at the moment. My kitchen's down at the moment.
Be happy to host. Nope.
All
Great.
right. I would love to find a time maybe we could do that. And
Okay.
Zach, you've done a lot of great work. I think there's already some things that are gelling here, but
Nice job, Zach.
Maybe
happy to help.
does it sound like maybe a good idea, Zach, to send this around?
Yeah, sure, absolutely.
And
so I will warn you,
people could spend a little bit of time,
Yeah,
thinking
what I'll
about
do-
what their kind of key takeaways are. We can share next week.
Yeah, what I'll do is I will make the folder public and share the link out to the folder so that way people can have access to it. So I will warn you, these images are large. I think each one's like 2 or 3 megs. But in the Dropbox, you should be able to download all of them. And I can even throw, the PowerPoint is basically the exact same thing as the images. All I did was copy and paste the images. And so, but yeah, I'll share out that folder tonight and to Andrew, and that way he can send it out.
And then, maybe, Jim, I don't know when Wednesday nights I play soccer. Just looking at next week. I know the first is Thursday, so that doesn't give us a ton of time, but we could chew on this a little bit. I couldn't do the end of this week, but I think I could pull off Tuesday, the 29th, or even Monday for that matter. And maybe we just come prepared to sort of say, okay, well, here where I think the top 5 takeaways were, and we can, the data's here. I can have an intern, Zach, overlay this information. You've already sort of given them some thoughts as to what data points would be helpful to overlay on top of some of these maps. So would Monday or Tuesday work? A little informal get together of those that are interested.
Either of those
Tuesday
works
works
for me.
better for me, but I can make any day work.
So
Would
I'm
you
sorry,
say
which day?
Monday or Tuesday of next week was what I was going to propose.
Is Sunday evening out of the question?
Sunday, that's not a terrible idea.
Like the 27th?
Probably make that work. Yeah.
Yeah, that'll work.
Yeah.
I may show up covered, drenched in sweat, but if you don't mind that.
Not at all.
We're building a garage in my backyard, so my dad's coming up and we're
Good for you.
hoofing at it.
Nice.
Nice. Nice.
Andrew, I have a question. When we try to, think about what the takeaways are from this, are we looking at it like, what's the top 5 most important things for all of Clintonville, or what's most important for each geographic location?
I think both, and I do think that I think there are some. Zach, correct me if I'm wrong. I think there's some clear, top 5, top 9, whatever it is, and then inside of that, there are clear priorities for certain, dialed in places. So I do think it's worth noting where those clusters are, and it's possible even with ones that maybe weren't in the top 10 that there's still some clusters other places that are worth mentioning. So. The purpose of doing this was to identify where needs were, so that when we advocate for, city projects, whether it's, the next round of ERF funding, or, saying to the city, here are problems that we have. Can you help us address it? Or are there any projects that are coming up that would help us get to this? I think that's why we wanted to do this and have that information at hand for the commission and to inform planning. And I know that the Indianola study that's being done south of North Broadway right now is very interested in what these results show. So, these can help. I think this survey information really has a shelf life of a couple of years that can help to inform city projects.
Well, if the city wants to sponsor one in the future, we can figure out a way to make it happen too.
That's right.
Nice. Yeah.
Excellent. Well, I think it's becoming clearer. I know this has been we're all volunteers. It's taken a minute to get through it. And thanks, Zach, for continuing to sort of do the crunching behind the scenes and starting to tell a story here that I think is pretty compelling and pretty clear.
Yeah, absolutely. I think next steps with helping identify priorities is going to be super helpful.
Yeah. Excellent. Well, once you get that there, I do have, Zach, you should have access to the committee Dropbox, but if not, I can get it up there for everyone.
Okay.
So either way,
Yeah.
it doesn't matter to me. Easily done. Certainly by lunchtime tomorrow, I'll be able to get this over to everybody.
Sounds great.
And then I am also going to send out the emails to the winners of the survey, Jim. So
You got it. Okay.
Zach texted that to me the other day, and I forget. I've been meaning. I went on vacation, so I've been meaning to email those folks. But should I just copy you on those emails, Jim, to help facilitate that?
Yeah.
Or
Go ahead, just send them to me, and I'll reach out to Michelle
Okay,
White.
perfect.
Actually, there's a new market manager, and then so what did we? It was a 25 market, 25 from NOS, right?
that's
Two
correct.
two different ones. Okay,
That's right.
absolutely.
Yeah,
And
I'll
we'll
send you
figure
those
out
names.
the best way to do that.
Okay, I appreciate that.
Sounds good.
That was our incentive for people taking it. So
That's right.
and when we did promise Zach, I think maybe once we do a commission presentation, I'll get with Commissioner White to get that on the calendar. We'll want to find a way to, in a digestible form, to make that available to those that said they would like to find more information. So
yeah, my thought is we can just clean that email list real quick and send it over to the Clintonville Area Commission, and then they can send it out using their email blast system.
Mm-hmm. Got it.
Which I'm sure is something like there's MailChimp or something
exactly.
like that.
Yep.
I wanted to say Survey Monkey, but it's MailChimp, not
it's MailChimp. Yeah. Hard to keep it straight. Okay, great. All right. Well, perfect. Any other thoughts or questions?
MailChimp and Survey Monkey are different from the monkey wrapped in copper, put in a steel barrel that they're doing on one of the cartoons.
Well, what about monkeys in a barrel?
Fuzzy, yes.
I just wanted to say that this is fascinating, the data that you've presented, and the process is very interesting to me, and I think it's going to lead us to some really good directions about the things we can show potential grantors or the city in directing funding. Good work is very interesting.
Yeah, I mean,
it's a really rich data set.
Yeah, an amateur survey would never have gotten this kind of data.
Yep. Well, I appreciate Hugh you joining us this evening, and look forward to talking with you more. And we'll send this data around, and look forward to if you can't make it Sunday, just sort of chatting about if you want to send your thoughts. We'll fold them into it. And
did we decide on a time?
Jim,
Sunday at 7.
That works.
Yeah.
I will email you or send the committee my address just so you have it.
Okay. Excellent. Well, thank you all very much. Enjoy the
Thanks, everyone.
beautiful evening out there.
Great
Thank
to see
you.
all.
All right.
All right.
Bye, everyone.
Take care.
Bye.
Thanks,
Take
Zach.
care. See ya.
See ya.